My final example for today mixes two concepts. So earlier in class, we learned about for loops and the I in the for loop that tells you how many times the for loop has completed. And now we've learned graphics. I just want to tell you the obvious thing that you put control flow like for loops together with graphics, and you open up a whole new world of goodness. And I want to show you an example that does exactly that. And I want you to practice thinking about that I in the for loop. It's going to be new for a lot of people, so I want you to see this example and many more. So here is a program, and I want us to first walk through it, and then we're going to run it. It makes a canvas, and instead of just drawing a couple shapes, it has a for loop, and every time that for loop is going to draw a new rectangle. And that new rectangle, it has a similar to the other one, a left X, top Y, a right X, bottom Y. Those are parameters a rectangle wants, and then magenta, our favorite color of the day. The play button is also magenta. So if we create this rectangle, the really interesting thing is what are the values of these variables? Because these are four different variables we set up. And the cool thing is, and the thing I want you to focus on, that left X depends on I. I is the variable which says, how many times have I completed the for loop? The first time through the for loop, I is 0, then 1. I print out I here so we can keep track. The left X and top Y both depend on I, and the right X and the bottom Y, just like in the last example, they're just equal to left X plus a constant amount. So the square will always be 10 pixels wide and 10 pixels tall. Shall we run it and see what it does? Left X is always I times 10, and top Y is always I times 10 as well. Ding! There it is. So it's a 300 by 300 canvas. So it's a little smaller than the last one we had. And if you count, there's 30 different squares here. And let's go into our little replay buffer and let's go through this step by step. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. So at the beginning, there was just a canvas. And then we entered the for loop for the first time. When you enter the for loop, you get a very special variable, I. It says, how many times have I finished the for loop? Well, at this point, 0. You haven't finished the body of the for loop even a single time. So you're 0. Because you're 0, and you can use this as a variable, we're going to calculate these two values based off it. 0 times anything is 0. So we end up with zeros for left and zeros for top Y. And then right and bottom are always just 10 larger than whatever left and top are. So at this point, we're going to draw a square. It's going to go from 0, 0 to 10, 10. 0, 0 is here, 10, 10 is here. Our square is going to be magenta, and bing, there's our square. Now I print out I. So I is still 0. I is going to be 0 all the way to the end of the for loop until we get to the next iteration. So we print out a 0. We come to the next iteration, and all of a sudden, I is 1. Why 1? Because we've completed one full iteration, and we can see that because there's a single square. Now this iteration looks very similar. It's just I has a different value. It used to be 0. Now it's 1. So that means that left X and top Y are no longer 0, 0. They're now 10, 10. And right X and bottom Y are going to be 20, 20. And now we're going to draw a square from 10, 10 to 20, 20. It's going to be magenta. And bing, there it is. We print out I, which is 1. And we can see I, in fact, did change these 2 times through the loop. And we can go through another time. Now I is 2. We've completed 2 iterations. Left X and top Y are now 20, 20. Right X and bottom Y are 30, 30. And if you drew from 20, 20 to 30, 30, you would get a magenta square right there. And we print out 2 because now we've finished 2 iterations. And now I has the value 3. We just finished our second iteration. Now the number of iterations that have completed are 3, and we can see that there's in fact 3 squares. It's our 4th time through the loop, but we've completed 3 iterations. And we can just zoom up to the future. Eventually we get to the point where there are 28 eventually we get to the point where we have drawn 28 we've drawn 29 different circles, and we get to our final iteration of the for loop. In the very last iteration, I is not 30. If we've completed 30 iterations, we're done with the loop. In the final iteration, I is 29 because we've completed 29 iterations. That means that left X is 290 Top y is 290, right x is 300, 300, and if you draw something from 290, 290 to 300, 300, you're going to get a rectangle in right that spot. You print out 29, and you're done. You never print out 30, because now we get to the top of this loop, and it's like, how many times have you completed? 30? Well, then don't run it any more times, and we skip to the end of the program. For loops, you can use the I variable. You can mix them with graphics that allow you to draw a whole bunch more shapes. You can draw a whole bunch of shapes with this graphics library. I hope you guys have a fantastic time. Welcome to the world of graphics.